your favorite Warzone loadouts have just been nerfed. And the first gun that we're going to be talking about is here on your screen. It is the Ram 9. Now, this gun is 100% in the meta. You can see from the stats on your screen that it is one of the fastest killing SMGs. It's very mobile. It is a very good gun. The one thing I don't like about this gun is that it's not the best sprint to fire speed when it comes to just sprinting to fire. And I do think that's very important with SMGs. But you can see from the stats that most of your SMG gunfights are going to be around the 10 meter to 15 meter range. So you can see here that I'm aiming at this bot right now in the firing range, and that is a 10 meter gunfight, and that's pretty far for an SMG. If you go up to the 25 meter mark right there, that's kind of pushing it when it comes to SMG range. A lot of the times you'll kind of swap to your AR and be able to use that. So when it comes to this gun, it is a very, very usable SMG. It has very good mobility, and with these attachments on it, it's an absolute laser beam. Here you go. The first way I would build this weapon, you're going to see it right here, is going to be the Zem compensator, the DR6 hand stop for some mobility, high grain for a little bit more range, 50 round, and then the recon comb. And you're going to see, if I pull up the stats right here, you're going to see that the sprint to fire on this gun is 140 ms, which is not the best for an SMG, but it's not bad, especially when it comes to playstyle. And then on top of that, you're going to have your effective damage range all the way up to 11.7 meters. So not a bad weapon. It's going to have a great time to kill. It's got good mobility. Its ADS movement speed is one of the best, and I love building it this way. This is my #1 build for it, but I'm going to show you 2 other ways you can build this for different types of playstyles. Right here is going to be the tac stance build. If you suck at controlling recoil, but you just love the Ram 9, or you want a gun that does hit very hard, you can use something like this. It's going to be insanely accurate. There is no laser on this one to give away your position, and it's just overall a really good build to use tac stance. And it's definitely an underrated build because tac stance is actually not that bad for more of the casual players that don't like really dealing with the ADS recoil control. And this is going to look something like this when you're shooting the gun. You can see how accurate this thing is even in tac stance, and there's not going to be a lot of recoil control with it. So if you want to use something like this, you can definitely get away with it. It's going to be a very fun build to use. And now moving on to the last build for this weapon. It's going to be right here on your screen. It's going to have a different barrel for different mobility. It's going to have the armistice light barrel, a different muzzle just for the recoil control, because this gun does have some weird horizontal recoil. And just in general, I love this build too. This build is a little bit different just because you're not using the high grain rounds on this. You're actually using this barrel for ADS speed, movement speed, and just overall the sprint to fire speed too. So if you look at the stats on this one, the sprint to fire speed on this is going to be 162, which is not as good. That is because I am using the HVS pad, which we did not have on the other build. But this is still a really good gun. This is something too where the sprint to fire, it's all really depends on your playstyle too. If you're sliding around a lot, you can kind of avoid sprint to fire speed. And on top of that too, this is just a good gun for, you know, ADS mobility, having a lot of just that strafe speed and using that left stick. So if you're a left stick aimer, this could be a really good gun for you too. So those are 3 ways to build the Ram 9, one of the best guns in the Warzone meta right now. Let's move on to the next weapon. Next SMG that I love talking about in this SMG meta, and is very, very underrated, is the WSP9. Now, this is my favorite build. I use this one primarily. I do have another build that I will show you guys, but I like using this one because it's suppressed, and having that suppressor is always nice, not being on that mini map. Having the long range with the long barrel is good. The jack glassless optic is actually a really good option to get away from the firing aim stability that you lose by using the sonic suppressor instead of a compensator. And then the factory stock for some mobility, and then the 50 round mag. This thing in the stats is a really, really good gun. It holds its range. It's not 100% the fastest killing gun within the first like 8 to 9 meters, but it holds its range a lot farther than some of the other guns. If you could see here from the stats, you see the effective damage range is at 21 meters. But the thing that's really cool about this is that this gun has a lot of range, but it also has a really good sprint to fire speed, where you can see right there it's at 108 milliseconds, which is way faster than the Ram 9 and some of the other guns that we're going to show you guys. So this gun has the range, it has a sprint to fire speed, and just overall a really good gun. I love this one specifically. This is my favorite build. It's going to shoot something like this, which is really, really nice. Not a lot of recoil. And this jack glassless optic, again, helps that firing aim stability that you lose by not having a compensator. So overall, I really like this gun, but there's one other way I would build this weapon, and that build is right here on your screen. Now, this gun's iron sights is a little weird. I kind of like using this a little bit more for resurgence, but you can see from the stats that this sprint to fire speed on this one is 75 milliseconds on resurgence and Vandal, where you're kind of just getting a little bit crazy, a lot more mixy gunfights. This is something that I like to have a lot of fun on. It shoots really accurately still. Personally, for me, I can control the recoil with the iron sights. The actual iron sights kind of a little just funky looking, but depending on what camo you use too, you can obviously change it up. I actually don't prefer using interstellar camo on this gun as much as I just kind of like using a no camo that just looks like this. And the reason why is for some reason I feel like I can just see the iron sights a little bit better without the camo just all over the gun. It could be just a weird personal thing, but still, this gun's really fun. It's got good speed, it's got good range, it's got good mobility, ADS, and everything that you really need, and just a different way to use this gun that has better sprint to fire for the smaller maps. So definitely a good gun, 100% in the meta. That's 2 different WSP9 builds that you can use, and now let's move on to this next weapon. Now, this next gun is going to be here on your screen. It is the HRM9. If you guys watch my stream, you know this is my #1 SMG. Now, it's not the strongest SMG. It does have a really insane time to kill, so it definitely competes, but it's not 100% the strongest SMG. We'll get to that one in a second. But this one, overall, with the sprint to fire and the range that it holds and the movement and the mobility, I love this build specifically. It's going to shoot something like this, where you can see it has a little bit of an initial jump, but after that initial jump, it's pretty accurate, especially with the high grain ammos. You know, that initial jump is a little bit worse, but it's something that's super, super manageable. You have good strafe speed, and on top of that, you just have really good mobility. And again, the sprint to fire speed on this gun is the reason why I like it so much. It is going to have a 81 millisecond sprint to fire by still holding a pretty effective damage range, and the time to kill and the stats are pretty good. And then the mobility and the tactical sprint speed is at a 7.1, so it's just an overall really good weapon for me to use. I feel the most comfortable with it, and also using this gun, hip firing, sliding, and hip firing feels really comfortable for me. So this is my #1 build on it, but let's give you a few more. The other way I would build this weapon, if you don't like the initial jump, just take off the high grain ammunition and throw a Zem compensator on it. Still a very accurate weapon, still really good sprint to fire speed, and just in general, a little bit more accurate. It's going to be a little bit more fun to use, probably for more of the casual player, or even really good players use this exact build too. Not everyone takes off the muzzle. That's kind of just a personal preference. So this is just another way to build the faster moving HRM9. And then one more build for you is going to look like this. And here you can see we're using the Graw iron sights. It's really just super satisfying to use this gun. This one has basically no recoil. I'd probably use this one more on the big map just because of how good of a build it is. Still pretty mobile, has really good range, a little bit more than the first build that I was showing you guys. And just this iron sight, there's nothing better than this iron sight, and it's so satisfying to use. So again, this is a build that I've experimented with too. I love this build, and the attachments on this one are this. Right here, we're going to use the flash hider, the long barrel, the DR6 hand stop, the 50 round drum, and the folding stock. The folding stock's really important just for some recoil, gun kick, and firing aim stability. Firing aim stability is also very important too. So you can see just in general, a very good weapon. If you pop this one up, the effective damage range is just a little bit more, and you still have a good sprint to fire speed with the having a little bit more range, and just overall a very good gun. It's not going to be as mobile as the other builds I just showed you, but still with these attachments, if you're someone who just wants to play a little bit slower, or you play big map primarily, try this build out. Let me know what you guys think. And if you don't like this build too much, you can take off this flash hider, and you can actually put on the Zem compensator for just a little bit more recoil control if you're really struggling and you do not care about being fast. But still, this build is insane. Give it a try. Let me know what you guys think, and let's move on to the next one. This next one's definitely probably on the lower end of the meta guns out of the top 5, I would say, but it's still 100% usable, still very good. You can see from the stats on your screen, it does compete, but it does have a little bit of a damage range drop off. But these are the attachments I like using, and just overall, when I use this Striker 9, I feel kind of mobile, but I also just feel really accurate, and just a very satisfying weapon to use. You can see here the sprint to fire is still pretty good in the 100 range. It's, you know, at the higher end on the sprint to fire time, which is something that I really do value a lot personally for my play style. But it's going to be mobile, and this is also going to be mobile and accurate. It's going to shoot something like this. And you can see here, it just doesn't have that crazy of recoil, and these gunfights that you're taking from farther range is just not going to be like super consistent. You're not taking 50-meter gunfights with this. So within this 10-meter range, which is like that threshold, even the 25-meter range, it's definitely something that you're going to be able to hit your shots with. It's going to be reliable, and it's just going to be satisfying to use. Something a little bit different if you're just kind of getting bored. But if this gun's a little bit too slow for you, this is the coolest thing about the Striker 9 is you can actually build this to be an absolute speed demon and still kind of be able to be accurate with the attachments right here on your screen. And now these attachments are crazy because this is not something that you're going to use for range, or the damage drop-off's a little worse with the stubby barrel. This is 100% a speed demon class. I would use this probably more on Vandal, or if you're just really aggressive, you can use this on big map when you're inside of the buildings and all that stuff. But if you pull up the stats here, you can see that the sprint to fire on this gun now is at 68, and you're just moving at the speed of light. The tactical sprint speed's at a 7.3. Your ADS movement speed is at a 4.0, which is basically unheard of. And when you are shooting this weapon, this one's going to have a little bit more recoil, but it's not going to be too uncontrollable. And you can just see how quickly you just strafe left and right with this thing. And you can basically camera corners and use your movement. So if you're a movement style player, try this kind of build out and let me know what you guys think. Again, not very accurate for long range. Something that you want to be really aggressive with, but a very fun build that you can mess around with. And people like TP actually use this build too. It's a really good build that some of the best players in the world use. Give it a try. Let me know what you guys think if you're a movement-based player. And let's move on to this last and final SMG. And the final gun is going to be the AMR9 right here on your screen with these attachments. Is the way I like to build it. The one downfall of this gun, in my opinion, is the movement, mobility, and the sprint to fire. Like, that collection of things is kind of why a lot of people don't always use this gun. And the only way to really make this gun usable in those categories is by using the demo buffer tube and trying to make it as fast as possible. But if you make it as fast as possible, sometimes you lose firing aim stability and recoil control, and it's just very hard to find the balance of both. Personally, I think this is the balance of both right here. This class right here with the jack glassless optic now being an option is really, really nice because the jack glassless optic gives you that aim stability that I always keep talking about in these videos. And you're going to see that it has some jump. But again, if you're keeping this within the 10 meters, the 12 meters, the 15-meter gunfights, it's still very, very manageable, and it's going to be a good gun. Now, if you go look at these stats, you can see that the sprint to fire at 150 is actually not terrible. But again, this is going to be a little bit harder to just control because you can see how much you lose when it comes to gun kick, recoil control, and all that stuff with the buffer tube. That's why you need that compensator, and that's why you need that red dot. The iron sights on this gun are horrible, in my opinion. Something that I do think is underrated is using this class. If you use this class, you're using the fastest killing SMG in the game, and you're going to have some mobility. Personally, when I use this gun, I do have a lot of fun on it, especially on the smaller maps, but even on big map, this thing actually hits like a truck. A lot of fun to use, and if it's in your play style, you can build this a bunch of different ways too. That doesn't have to be like this. If you're a slower player, you can make this thing an absolute laser beam by just taking off this buffer stock. And even something like this for a build too is not something that's not that bad. You can use the light barrel for aim walking speed, and now that I don't have the buffer tube, this is going to have a lot more manageable recoil with the jack glassless optic, and it's going to shoot something like this too. And you can see this has a lot less jump, a lot more accurate, and still going to hit like an absolute truck. So you could still use something like this. And even with the high grain ammunition, this thing's really good. And if you take off the high grain ammunition, you're going to go down to about the 22-meter range instead of the 26, but it's still not that big of a deal because that's out of the SMG range anyway. So if you take off the high grain and throw a muzzle or throw a rear grip on, you can still make this thing really, really good. So if you're not that good with recoil control, you're a casual player and you want an absolute laser beam, try something like this and you will have a lot of fun with this gun too. But that is going to be it for all of the SMGs right now in the top 5. If you want me to make more off-meta kind of videos too that are just not always super sweaty, we could talk about some of the stuff that I make in my short forms too. The Lackman sub is really fun. The Vel's really fun. The P90 is really fun. There's a lot of different guns that you can use that are also usable, but statistically not going to be the best. But still, if you're trying to change it up and have some off-meta stuff, which is more like the mid category, let me know in the comments below. But either way, I appreciate you guys watching this video. Drop a like if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.